That's turkey for this is the Issues Watch podcast. Hello and welcome to the Issues Watch podcast. I'm Brad Muniz, your host for the bi-weekly accounting and auditing episodes. I'm an assurance principal at Clifton Larson Allen. And back with me today is Frank Boudelet, emeritus partner at Witham and my co-presenter for the Society's Law and Ethics webinar. Welcome back, Frank.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
He speaks turkey. This episode qualifies for Nano CPE credit. If you're interested in earning CPE credit for this episode, hit the pause button now and head over to njcpa.org/nano to find out how. Quick disclaimer, the views and statements expressed herein are our own and not necessarily those of NJCPA, CLA, or Witham. Okay, so Frank, today we have a couple interesting topics. I wanted to say that usually when I have Frank on here, you probably notice a trend that it's a lot of AICPA content and PCAOB, because you've done a lot of PCAOB stuff in your past life. Yes. And I'm sure you're happy to be retired and not be dealing with the PCAOB.
Absolutely.
After I saw 5 firms getting sanctioned yesterday, it's a tough world out there. But you're going to have some good, interesting comment in here.
Hope so.
You hope so. If not, we'll try and make it interesting.
Right,
okay, there we go. So what's going on with the AICPA now? This one doesn't seem as real deep.
No, well, the AICPA, the board approved new standards to update this peer review standards. It's PRSU number 2. It's reviewing a firm's system of quality management and omnibus, I love omnibus, technical enhancements.
I'm on the bus, you on the bus?
I'm on the bus, I'm always on the bus. So what they did was they said that they're now incorporating the quality management standards into the peer review standards, because they weren't there before, because they don't go into effect until 25. So what they did was they bifurcated the dates. I love the word bifurcate, so I threw it in there. So the technical enhancements that are in that standard are basically going to be effective December 1st. But then the quality management standards that are related to quality management, they go into effect for years ending on or after December 31st, 25. So that should signal you that we better have quality management standards in place for 26.
Right.
Okay. Now they also say that firms have until December 15th of 25, so that's a year from next month,
right,
to have implemented the quality management standards. So you have to implement them and then start using them, because their peer reviews in 26 are going to start incorporating the standards.
Right.
And from what I'm hearing, not a lot of firms are really on top of this yet with the quality management standards.
No, and I know the society, I had a session on the quality management standards, and the society had a whole session relating to quality management standards. What people have to understand is, on December 15th, you don't just like pick up a book, put your name on top of something and put it somewhere. You have to first evaluate the system and determine the risk. You have to assess the risk.
Right, that's the big one, yeah.
And then put it into effect.
Put it in effect, exactly. So you're assessing the risk of your firm and the type of work that you're doing.
Exactly.
And what you also have to look at is, how is my firm structured? Do I have the right personnel in the firm to meet the standards?
So where this all circles back to is that peer review needed to change their standards to make sure that the reviewers are focusing on this now too.
Absolutely. Well, I was on the peer review board years ago, the AICPA peer review board, and I was on the standards committee. So we were updating the standards. So I really wish I was on the committee now to deal with this, just because this is exciting times. The one last thing I want to just bring up, the peer review board also came up with that partners that have retired. So, right, which is me. You now can be a team member for three full years.
Okay.
So, because when you retired, if you're not doing any review work in the firm, you were no longer peer review qualified.
Gotcha.
So now you have 3 years. So my 3 years ends December 31st. The question I have is, well, I was still doing some work for the firm through 22. So does my 3 years start at 22? So I got to look at that.
Does it continue on?
Does it continue on? So but that's a big change. And the reason that's a big change.
I was wondering
why. Ask me. Go ahead.
Why did they make this change?
They can't find peer reviewers. That's why. It's interesting that they are struggling to find people to do peer review.
So we're going to bring Lazarus back from the dead and say, we can use you now.
Right.
Okay.
That's it.
Super.
Super
Oh, boy.
stuff.
So the PCAOB, I give them credit for something. Okay, usually you and I attack them on stuff.
I don't attack the PCAOB.
No, I love
PCAOB.
them. I love them. But I do give them credit for something. They're actually coming up with an initiative where they're trying to help smaller firms, smaller audits.
Right.
Audits of smaller entities. Because, always thought is, this is too big. So they're trying to I don't want to say make it scalable, but they're trying to come up with an initiative. They actually have a site where you can find links to things. And this is one of the things that they came up with.
Yes. So, critical audit matters. So they came up and said, and they put out the staff is continuing to identify large deficiencies in CAMs. CAMs are critical audit matters that have to now be put into the audit report. And basically, those are the things that you determine are critical to the audit that you need to communicate to management. But what they're finding is that they're finding that firms are not analyzing the potential CAMs, which means they're probably analyzing it, they're just not documenting.
Right.
So I think this is all, to me, it's a documentation issue. So they're not documenting those critical areas or how they're communicating it. They're not performing any procedures around identifying the CAMs and determining if they truly are critical audit matters. They're not taking into account certain required factors in determining whether or not one or more matters are CAMs. So they're seeing matters and they're saying, yeah, but that's not really a critical audit matter. What's critical and what's not critical? Again, the part I see here is what might be critical to me. If I deal with this stuff all the time, it's really not critical.
Right.
And if the client's dealing with it, is it critical to them? They already understand it. So that's where they're going with this. And then they're also saying that they're not including a description of the principal considerations that led the auditor to determine that it was a CAM. So again, I think this is all documentation, that you're not documenting how you evaluated all the matters, which ones were decided to be critical, how you communicated that to management, and then the big one, so what did you do about it in your audit? Just because it's critical audit matter, how did you change your audit? And that's always been a thing with risk assessment. How did you identify a risk? How did you change the procedures that you're performing? That's where I think that this is all about. And the last, God, you're going to say something because I have something else I want to say. Go ahead.
The thing that I'm seeing about this
Yes.
is that you're coming up with something and telling the auditor, you said that when you communicate to management, actually this goes in the report, right?
Right.
So this isn't just a management, this is to the investors and
Right. It's everybody
in the
that
community, right?
Right.
The world. The issue that you're saying is that you're telling them, we want you to identify a critical audit matter, so then we can go in and determine if you did more work around that matter.
Right.
So nobody then wants to say, oh, this is an audit matter because we want you to beat us up to make sure we did enough work.
Right.
So I say in our office, don't plant landmines that you're going to step on yourself.
Right.
So this is a landmine that people don't want to plant.
Right.
Unfortunately, they have to. I mean, imagine every job has to have
Sure.
at least one critical audit matter, at least one.
At least one.
And so people are going to try to avoid it. Unfortunately, it's human instinct.
Here's a one, going concern. That's an audit matter.
That was my call I had earlier.
Yeah, no, so that would be a good thing for people to see that, hey, we're not sure if there's a going concern issue here. Here's a critical audit matter, and then what do we do about it?
Right.
The last thing I was going to say is, we're talking about PCAOB, and those that out there don't do PCAOB, they're saying, well, it doesn't matter to me. Well, the AICPA has their own CAM. But
Oh,
what
so
is
they
their
have CAMs also.
They have CAMs also, but they don't spell it the same way.
Oh.
They spell it with a K. Like Kathy can be a K or a C. Right?
Oh, I
See,
gotcha.
the same thing. So
I
the
gotcha.
CAM is it's key audit
Oh,
matters.
so we have key audit matters, but they have critical audit matters. We have CAMs and they
right.
have
So
CAMs.
AICPA, yes. So,
Okay.
So that's why it drills down. So what's happening in the public company sector, you're going to find it in private companies as well.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Illegal acts.
I love illegal acts.
I love committing, did you say?
No.
Okay.
We are required, PCAOB, again, this federal securities law requires auditors to detect illegal acts, to look for illegal acts, and to determine whether or not those illegal acts are significant enough to be evaluated. So, and I guess they're finding that firms are not doing that work. They're not detecting illegal acts. And when you look at for fraud, Brad, you're going to know this. Who typically finds fraud? The auditor or
Well, the police or who you?
whistleblower?
Oh, the whistleblower. I thought this was Andy Griffin.
No, the whistleblower. The whistleblower is the one that
Okay,
detects
right,
most
yes.
of it. The auditors don't find it
No,
all
the
that
auditors
often.
no, because we usually have the staff asking the questions.
Exactly.
The staff go in and say, "Is there any fraud?"
Right.
No. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Right.
So now what they're emphasizing, and again, the PCAOB spotlight is just emphasis to auditors, hey guys, you really need to be looking at this closer because there are some illegal acts that are out there that are not being detected, so you're required to detect those. And basically what they're also, in that spotlight, they went into that you should be doing your risk assessment procedures. And you should be saying, okay, you have to understand the industry that the client is in, understand how the client is structured, and the environment, and determine from that, is there a potential for fraud? You know, if they're dealing with Bitcoin, are they dealing what kind of currency could be an issue? It could be a lot of different part of countries that they're
Different
dealing
foreign
with,
countries, a big
the
one.
geographic. Yeah. So what factors are you looking at, and then documenting that in your audit, and then performing the procedures to try to detect it.
Oh, not just the procedures, and then how did you respond when you
Right,
did detect
exactly.
it? Because we're talking about PCAOB, and I hope a lot of people just turn off.
No.
AICPA has a legal act
Exactly,
also.
exactly.
And if you find a legal act, which I find very interesting, I've read this illegal acts a lot in the AICPA. If you find it, you have to evaluate it and determine how it's being addressed by management.
Right. Yeah.
And then it just kind of hangs there. Now, if it's so significant they haven't addressed it, you may have to disengage.
Exactly.
But that's a whole different
right.
level.
But again, the interesting thing on this for today is we talked about two PCAOB things, but they all relate to AICPA. AICPA doesn't put this kind of information out there, but the PCAOB does.
Right.
So that's why I would recommend everybody look at the PCAOB. What are they issuing? Because most of the time it's going to affect your private companies.
And that's one of the things that I'm glad you said that, because I get the PCAOB alerts and I read them over, and we don't do PCAOB work anymore, but the information is so good and it really ties into what we do for SAS audits. And as we say a lot of times, it trickles down.
That's right.
A lot of it's going to affect it. So, all right. So, thank you for all the information,
You're
Frank.
welcome.
In closing, here are some upcoming accounting and auditing events you might be interested in. The Society's popular annual nonprofit conference is on December 5th. There's a 4-hour FASB update review on December 19th. And on December 20th, there's a 2-hour webinar on changes in accounting principles and error corrections. That sounds really interesting, that one. I do like that one. Get info on these events and more at njcpa.org/events. And of course, be sure to join the Society's Accounting and Auditing Standards Interest Group. Sign up for free at njcpa.org/groups. Frank, thanks for joining.
Glad to be here, Brad.
And everybody here, thanks for watching or listening. And before, when I said free, I think my arm may have gone out too far because it's so big.